wrong. Friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Aireonna, joined by the wonderful Tom Jensen. Hi, Tom. How
Uh,
you doing?
Doing okay, Ashley. How are you?
Doing really good. I mean, 49ers kicked Dallas's ass. What's new?
That's a good place.
Death taxes. 49ers crushing Dallas. That's nice that we have that. I feel like going into the Chiefs game, I was like, this is gonna be a loss. But going into Dallas, I was like, this will be a win. Now, I don't necessarily feel much different about the team after this game. Maybe I should ask you, did the win against Dallas change your opinion of the 49ers right now?
Not really, because you have to factor in who Dallas is right now. They were missing their five best pass rushers, their best cornerback, and they lost their starting running back a couple hours before kickoff. So beating Dallas now doesn't mean a whole lot. There's not a lot of conclusions you can draw from it.
Agree. I feel like the things that we were worried that the 49ers were struggling with, they still struggled with outside of that third quarter where obviously they scored 21 unanswered points, and that was really impressive. But when we're looking at the season as a whole, they haven't been able to play that way consistently for even one game, let alone multiple games in a row.
Right.
And if they were playing a better team, I feel like Dallas would have, like, if Dallas was a better team, they would have came back. They needed that 17 point, lead in the fourth quarter to win. If they would have had their usual 10-point lead, the 49ers might not get out of there with a W. And obviously it's great. They needed that just to hopefully start a succession of, honestly, three, in my opinion, pivotal wins that they need in a row. But
Right.
it's going to be, I think, interesting to see if coming out of this bye week, the team can really pull it together and play, you know, all four quarters of football consistently well. How do you feel about what they did in the third quarter? And how are you going into maybe halftime? Because I feel like now that the 49ers won, you're seeing a lot of optimism, but I don't think I'm alone in going into halftime. I was like, we're gonna need to make some major changes if the game doesn't turn around immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. I was worried a little bit going into halftime, but I also thought that Dallas played really well in the first half for them. And so I thought that that was unlikely to continue. And it's always when you're playing Dak Prescott, you know that you're going to get a gift or two. And that's what happened. So, yeah, I was worried, but not no, on pins and needles about what the Niners would do. I was more worried at the end of the game when they let Dallas back in than I was worried at halftime.
Completely agree. We actually have a commentator that says in garbage time, Dak is a top three QB, but he's top 20 when not. We're going to go over some rankings later on, but yeah, Dak is not someone who installs, confidence in you. I think very similar to Geno Smith. And
Right.
maybe these are two quarterbacks that play other teams well, because I know that recently Dak, I think just last year, did he win offensive not off what did he win? He was
He
like
was
rated higher than Brock Purdy, right?
he was second in the MVP voting because of his
Yeah.
stats.
So like
And for a Niner
but
fan,
if
it's
you
just
were watching the
shocking.
team against the Niners, that would be ludicrous.
Right.
And I feel like that's similar to Geno Smith. Like I'm always hearing he's actually a really good quarterback, and obviously the Seahawks paid him. But if I'm just going off of how he's played the 49ers, I'm like, this is same old Geno from the Jets. Like this guy does not scare me at all.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Both of those quarterbacks I look at when they play the Niners, they're Canadian Football League quarterbacks. When they play the rest of the league, they're okay. But against
yes,
us, they suck
yes,
badly. And so it's hard for a Niner fan to take them seriously.
I agree. Now, there was some bright spots in that game. I did think that Brock Purdy turned it around with the utilization of his legs and honestly throwing the ball better in that second half, specifically that third quarter, was really, really helpful. His scrambling for a first down was critical in one of the three touchdowns that they ended up scoring. So Brock did really well in showing that athleticism, like I said, especially in the third quarter. But in that first quarter, or in that first half, I felt like he was pretty erratic with his throws. He overshot Kittle. He threw behind Deebo Samuel. He wasn't utilizing his legs, so that was kind of confusing. And Dallas was actually doing fairly well against the 49ers run game, which was even more surprising because Dallas was ranked very poorly in run defense. Now, they did get better, but something that still scares me is the 49ers were 3 of 4 in the red zone, and Dallas was ranked 31st in the red zone going into that game. So they still weren't able to make the most out of every single opportunity that they had. And like I said, I think their competition is going to get harder as they go on.
Much.
I'm of the opinion, I think you've talked about this in previous articles that you've written, that they needed that win against Dallas, no matter how it looked. They need this win against Tampa coming out. They need a win against the Seahawks. And that's really going to set them up for the gauntlet, in my opinion, of the rest of their season if they want to make a playoff run. And I think all those things are possible and ahead of them, especially when we look at some of the standouts from the game. Obviously, we'll get into some guys that might come out of injury, and those guys will also be helpful. But when we're talking about the people on the field right now, you gave some game balls in your article. Do you want to talk about some of the highlights from the game,
Sure.
some of the players
Well,
that stood out to you?
George Kittle played exceptionally well. 6 catches, 126 yards, and a touchdown. He continues to prove that he's their best red zone target. And I think, and you've talked about that a lot, that
Yeah.
they need to target him more. And I think that's true. That he's proven that
They
he's a
should
good
pay
player
me.
to go to when you're in the red zone to convert. And against Dallas, though, it's not a big feat to go 3 or 4 in the red zone because their defense is that bad. They were one of the worst red zone defenses coming in. So I don't draw a lot of conclusions from the Niners' success there. But I do like that they went to Kittle, that they used the run game when they had to try to set things up, and that when Purdy was inaccurate in the first half, he came back in the second and threw underneath and was much more accurate. He had better timing and accuracy, and so that allowed players to get some yak. Part of the
Yeah.
problem for the Niners not
Let's
getting
do
yak
more
this
of
year,
that. Why
yeah,
have they moved away from that this year?
yeah, I don't understand that either. It's part of the key with yak is hitting a player in stride, and why their yak has suffered is because Brock hasn't done that well. So if you go to underneath routes, it's more likely to get somebody on the move, and they use that well in the second half, especially in that third quarter run when they put up 21.
Absolutely. When when we're talking about the run game in the second half, I thought Isaac Guerendo was maybe even a surprise. We've definitely seen him go in for a few plays and be able to get off some far runs to the outside. He carried that again today or again on Sunday. He had, I think his first run was 15 yards and then he came back and went for like a 20-yard run fairly soon after that. He averaged, I think, 6 yards a carry. So he did really well. 14 carries for 85 yards and a touchdown with over 100 yards in total offense. Um, I liked seeing him on the field. Even if Jordan Mason comes back and is healthy with that shoulder, I would love there to be more of a mix between the two. I don't know if Kyle Shanahan would do that because we've seen him ever since getting Christian McCaffrey being, or maybe even before that, being kind of a one running back. But if he could do more of a platoon, especially if Jordan Mason comes back, I imagine he'll still be recovering from that shoulder injury. He had that AC joint sprain that looked like he re-aggravated it either from a hit or falling on it. I'm hoping that they keep Guerendo as a main part of the game. Kyle did say that Jordan Mason could have came back in the fourth quarter, but because Guerendo was doing well, they didn't insert him in. Do you anticipate there'll be a platoon back and forth between the two, or do you think
I would hope so because part of what they're missing is that speed element. They need to have that where it's just a breakaway where you're a threat to score anytime you touch the ball. That's something the offense really needs. So you have to use Guerendo for that, and Jacob Cowing, and Ricky Pearsall. All those guys, you have to take advantage of their speed.
I on Ricky Pearsall, I thought that he had a couple really good catches and he got some yards after the carry, which was really impressive. I know, was it Chris Collinsworth kind of made fun of him for being a little bit slow on the broadcast, but I thought he did great. He also, recently got shot, and if Kyle can scheme him open, he can run down the field. That's all you need. I was very impressed with Ricky. I would love to see Jacob Cowing out there on offense, not just special teams, because we saw him
Great.
really utilize that down the field speed in place of Ayuk not being there. I don't know why he didn't get that opportunity today or on Sunday, but
Because Kyle apparently believes that Cowing doesn't have a full grasp on the playbook yet, and Kyle will be biased toward that. My bit would
okay,
be,
well,
okay,
whatever
you've got
plays he knew that was able to get him to run down the field, run that one.
right. You should have a package of plays for Cowing where you say, okay, we've got 20 plays for Jacob to run, and take advantage of his ability. He's the one of the top 3 accelerators in the draft at the combine. His 0 to 60 is really good. And in this offense, that's exactly what you want and need. So if you can set up Cowing on a crossing route or even on a wide receiver screen, if he breaks a tackle, he's gone. You have to take advantage of that. I don't like the bias toward, well, you haven't jumped through all my fiery hoops yet. Come on. He has the skill set you need to score and make it a one play drive. Use Cowing, not as a punt returner, as a receiver.
Yeah.
And Jonathan points that out in the chat. I agree 100%. They have to use Cowing more as a receiver. Look what he did in the preseason.
He's better on
He proved
offense as a
himself.
receiver than he is on special teams as a punt returner, in my
Right.
opinion.
Yeah, yeah. And the point of this is to score, and Cowing allows you to score on one play. And so Guerendo, Cowing, Pearsall, all those guys need to get the ball more because they're a threat to score.
Oh, great. Um, Now I want to say we mentioned Ricky Pearsall. I think he gets the game ball. I thought he's probably taken more of an elevated role than he was originally planning on coming back from injury so soon. And he stepped in and done very well. So I'm impressed with Ricky. He had 4 catches for 39 or 38 yards. Key run was really important. And then, like you said, George Kittle, he's on the way to having a Hall of Fame career. You said he was the MVP of the offense. I would agree with you so
Yeah.
far this year, more so than Debo. Even they really have made a point to target Debo, but I feel like Debo hasn't made the most out of his targets and carries. Not that he's done horrible, but I
Yeah.
when it comes to Kyle being where we're talking about running backs, he feeds the hot hand. I think they need to just start targeting Kittle until it stops working because they have that mindset with Debo, and he hasn't had that same yards after the carry, um, catching ability. Some of those are on ball placement, but I just don't think Debo is the same guy that he was a couple of years ago.
He's
Where
not.
even
He
though
still
Kittle,
has ability. It's just that
yeah,
it comes and goes. It's flashes.
yeah,
In
and
in
I'm not saying
2021, it was dominance.
don't
Now it's not
utilize
there as much.
Debo. I'm definitely not advocating to not utilize Debo. I'm just saying right now, if we look at how the season has played out so far, teams aren't stopping George Kittle. I would give, like, if you're going to divvy up targets right now, Debo's getting far more targets per game than George Kittle is, and I would switch that. You know.
Yeah, but that's Kyle. Kyle has always leaned Debo in his play calling, so I don't think you can kind of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
that's
any
fair.
plan calling for changing Kyle, I'm going to be jaded and say good luck. Um, that's me. Um, if you look at it though, you say that you need more pass protection to get the ball to Kittle. You need less for Debo because he can be a hot read out of a blitz or something like that. So that's part of why Debo gets more targets. But as long as you work Kittle enough where you let him to be really involved in the game like he was against Dallas, you need to continue to do that. measure what he can do in that game's matchup, and if he's got an advantage, milk it. Get him the ball more.
I agree. Now we have 49ers poker. I think talking a little bit about this says if scheming that roll open for a screen or crossing pattern, Debo over Cowing, Jennings, Pearsall, Debo primary receivers. Um, my only pushback on this with Cowing needing to learn how to block and have a bigger route tree is if you have a player who's talented, and we were saying this about Jordan Mason before because his problem was also he was struggling in the pass protections and stuff that was outside of running. And I think what a lot of people advocated for is before you get in a situation where you absolutely have to play him because of injury, why don't you give him some opportunities on the field doing at least what he's comfortable doing now, running the parts of the playbook that he's comfortable with now, and let him continue to develop those other aspects of his game during practice or off field. But that way, if you do need to call on this player to have a bigger role, he's ready and you're not just throwing him in with pretty much zero actual game experience. And that really
Right.
did happen with Jordan Mason. And then once he got in the field, he continued the little that we had seen before of him averaging, in between 6 and 10 yards per carry in a game. He continued to do that. And it was kind of like, oh, well, maybe if you would have factored that in earlier, maybe Christian McCaffrey wouldn't have gotten hurt because you could have at least taken McCaffrey off the field for more breathers and not had him being the running back that was getting punished. Obviously,
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey is special, and there is some things that are unique to him that Mason can't do. We're even seeing that with Guerendo. Although I will say, I noticed that Brock Purdy started dumping the ball off more to the running back in the second half. And it did strike me at I don't know if that's something that Kyle was reminding him of because there was plenty of game film from the Chiefs game where Jordan Mason was open and Brock Purdy was passing up opportunities to dump the ball off when no one else was getting open. But I will say he started doing that coming out of the second half of Dallas's game, but that was once Isaac Guerendo was in there. And that was really helpful at bailing offense out of trouble when in a previous game, maybe Purdy would run around too long, take a sack for loss, or have to throw the ball out of bounds or throw to a receiver that wasn't actually open. So I was glad that they transitioned back into that throwing shorter / middle down the field more.
Right.
But
Right.
all
Well,
I'm
they
saying here
they.
is,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ashley.
all I'm saying here is even if Cowing isn't 100% with every aspect of the playbook, I think there are ways to get talented players on the field.
Yeah.
And if you're that much of an offensive genius, you should be able to utilize that. We saw him utilize it last game, so we know that the guy isn't like completely inept in getting it worked one game ago. So even if that's the only thing that works, do that until it doesn't work. And then if it starts working and defenses are queuing in on it and he doesn't know anything else, then okay, get him off the field. But right now, there's something that's working that can help your team. Why would you just have that on the bench?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
my thought.
And I agree. Cowan can have a set of plays where he's proven he can do that
Yeah.
and do it
I'm not
well.
calling for him to be
Use,
like the
use the
number one
talent.
starter.
Right. It's just leverage the talent that you have. You've got guys that are exceptionally quick. Your team lacks speed otherwise. Use them in that capacity to vary it up. And in terms of throwing to the running backs, I think that they have to do that more. Is that the tendency is to say, well, he's not Christian McCaffrey, but then that's true of the entire league isn't Christian McCaffrey in as a receiver. But you still need to throw to your back so that the defense respects that and reacts to it. And I think that that's a way of spreading the defense out and working the gravity of the field and the gravity of certain players so that the defense has to acknowledge he's there, he's a threat, especially if it's somebody like Guerendo or Cowing, and in some cases Debo, where they're a threat to take it all the way. And we'll see what they can do, but I would like to see Kyle use all of the offense more and see what happened with Brock, where he got more accurate and he calmed down and then he started to run. It's when Brock doesn't feel like he's under assault, he thinks the game better. and he can run better. He can throw better. He can throw with anticipation and accuracy. It's just let Brock get into a flow, and then the offense gets into a flow coming out of him. Yeah, I think that's something they need to do, which means spread the ball around more. Don't focus too many targets on one guy, and try to work on what works for that player and involve everybody because you've got a very talented team. Use everyone.
Totally agree. Now, we went over a couple game balls for the offensive side. How did you feel really quickly before we transition into kind of our grades for the different players and position groups on the team? Do you have any game balls for the defensive side?
Yeah, I had Diamador Lenore, who I thought played a good game in coverage and made
Playing like
and yeah,
he's going to be too expensive to keep. That's what he's playing like.
he is, and they're going to have to figure out a way because he's becoming one of the top DBs in the league, and he would love to face Dak Prescott every week. He's
Oh
got
yeah, he does a really good job at baiting him.
yeah,
The is it? I forget if it was the first or second interception, but the one he's like so patient, and he talked about it later and said that he had seen Dallas run the play before many times, so he knew exactly where Dak was going to end up throwing the ball. But he was so smart in the fact that he really waited to like make his move. And then as soon as CD Lamb goes up to like actually catch the ball, he cuts right in front of him. And I felt like that was so impressive because obviously you see his, you know, boisterous confidence, ego in like a healthy way, and his really, tough physicality on the field. But then kind of hearing him talk about it after, it's like, this is a really smart guy too, you know? This is someone
absolutely.
who does his homework. He was studying film, and when they lined up in a certain formation, he was able to suss out what they were going to do. And I don't know, I really it
He's
impressed me with Demo.
Yeah, one of the underrated aspects for Demo is that he does a great job of reading the quarterback in game and picking up tendencies. So when he had the interception against Dallas a couple years ago, he saw that Dak was throwing basically alley oop sideline, and so Lenore said, "Okay, I'm going to watch his footwork and see if he's going to try to throw an alley oop again." And his interception in that game was based on that read that he knew he was throwing an alley oop, and he had a jump prior to the Dallas receiver and made the play. And that's brilliant. And that's the kind of player you keep. He's 24. He's getting better, and he's a rock. He's somebody that you can count on. So they're going to have
Really
to. I
hard.
think
I
they're going to
also
have to make the room for him, but they're going to have to change the salary structure. What they have now is okay. We got Ward at 13, and then we'll have another DB that's less expensive. No, you're going to need to pay Lenore whatever the market pays, and that could be high teens, 20s. You need to keep him, and I don't think you have a
interesting that they
choice. He
haven't.
has to be their top priority in bringing a player back in the offseason.
I agree. I was gonna say they haven't like invested much. Obviously, getting Travaris Ward was the most that they've invested in that secondary in a while, and that was a big deal for them. And even that wasn't like the highest paid, contract at the time. It was pretty middle of the road when you look at how much cornerbacks are making
Right.
in the NFL. And Ward definitely outplayed that last year. I also there's never a good time to say this, so I we're talking about it, so I should feel like we should say it now. For anyone who's watching who doesn't have Twitter, once again, I want to touch on this. There's not going to be a great transition in or out of it. Charvarius Ward, something that I always really admired about him. One of the first things that I saw of him was that like 5 questions interview things that Tracy Sandler does. She's one of the beat reporters. He was talking about some books he liked, which I felt like really humanized him because some of them were these fiction books that my little sister likes to read. I actually recognize some titles. And he really talked about decompressing outside of football and the importance of, what really matters in life. And he said that he got that perspective when he had his little baby girl who was born with Down syndrome. She was toddler now. She's a little bit over a year old, and she actually passed away. Um, so real my deepest prayers to Jarvis Ward. I don't even have words. I can't imagine such a horrific loss. I think losing anyone that's close to you is, you know, an unimaginable just like stop and wake up and just shake up. And that's when you're thinking about people who, matter to a lot to you, who have lived, their full life. Like I'm thinking about parents and stuff like this. So I can't imagine when it's something like your child and they're so young. Um, I hope that, I'm gonna pray for him. I hope nothing but healing for him and his partner. Um, like I said, I think something very cool about this, I said it about Ward or about Lenore, but I think with Ward, I feel like these people have a perspective outside of football where they really understand the value of life. And I just want to, send my condolences to Jarvis Ward. I hope that he is getting I'm sure he's getting a ton of support right now. And I just want, I don't think there's anything that's gonna make this okay. I hope he takes all the time he needs. There's never a good time for this to happen, but I am glad that there's a bye week. Although I don't, no pressure for him to come back whenever, but I'm glad he has this time where he can completely not even worry about what to do when it comes to football, and he can really focus on his family and that stuff. So I don't know.
Well, it's absolutely heartbreaking when you lose a 1 year old. This is the light of your life. This is your baby daughter. And to lose her that young, it leaves a permanent hole in your heart.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can really recover from that other than time and hanging on to the great memories of her.
Yeah.
And apparently the reporting is that she has or have this wonderful smile and an
Yeah.
infectious laugh. And she lived up, her name is Amani Joy. And apparently she brought a lot of joy to everyone that she touched. So to lose that in your life is just devastating. So yeah, my prayers go out to Travarius and his wife Monique and their families of just an awful, awful loss. And just so terribly sad and tragic. And I hope that he can move on, but it's a lot to ask of somebody when they lose a 1 year old daughter.
Absolutely. I would suggest that anyone who's in the comments and hasn't seen this already, Charberry's Ward is It's Mooney on Instagram. He has a bunch of pictures of her. She is like Tom said, she has an infectious smile. About a year ago, he wrote a really heart touching caption about how much she's changed his life and how much having a child that is dealing with disabilities has changed his perspective. So I, encourage everyone to send him your prayers, and if you're interested, to go look at the pictures that he has up of her. No way to gracefully transition out of this, but now we're going to talk about football again. But we were talking about Charvarius Ward, and so I didn't feel right not touching on it at
No, that I think that's the right call.
yeah. I
But
will say
now let's.
I don't know, and maybe it's not even good to speculate, so I won't go too much into it, but I know that Ward is having a bit of a down season compared to last season, which was his best season. I think it's been a little bit overblown. He still played very well, just not at the top. I mean, he was a Pro
Well,
Bowl level player last year.
right.
And I know that he had spoken and said that there was some stuff going on that he couldn't talk about. Mike Silver reported on it. Grant Cohn reported on it. At the time, just because my mind is on football, I was thinking, is there something with the transition from Steve Wilkes to Nick Sorensen, something like that? Maybe that's still true, but maybe it's also possible that there was some home life stuff that he, had weighing on him that he didn't want to talk about yet, because obviously
And that's
didn't know.
understandable, perfectly
Yeah,
understandable. But,
absolutely, absolutely.
and the other thing is that Ward had to come off of core injury problems also.
Yes,
So
and he
he
didn't
had a
leave
lot to
the
overcome physically in addition to what was happening
yes,
with Amani. So it's understandable what he's gone through. But you know, the Niners are going to have to make some tough choices on the free agent market.
Great. And I think,
Fortunately, they're probably going to have to let Ward go. And
yes,
he was a top 5 DB in the league last year. So we've
I
seen
think
what
he'll
he
be
can
able to
do
get
at his
paid.
peak.
I
He
think
can
he'll be
still
able to get
play at
paid
that
more on
level.
another team for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
He'll still do well, but I just think that from the Niner perspective, it's tough to talk about this now. But they need to keep Lenore and change the salary structure for their secondary going forward. And so that also means embracing Malik Mustapha and Jair Brown as your safeties. So those are low cost guys. Renardo Green, who had the highest PFF ranking in the
I
Dallas
saw that
game.
for any rookie, right?
So he's been playing exceptionally well. So if you've got 3 guys on rookie contracts, you can then pay Lenore. They have to think about the secondary collectively rather than having an individual ceiling of saying, well, our cap blueprint calls for no more than X at DB. No, it should be our cap blueprint is we're going to spend X in the secondary and then to weigh it out with those 3 rookies in Lenore.
One of the reasons that bye week is going to be so important, or this bye week is going to be so important, you mentioned Renardo Green, who was the highest rated rookie for PFF. He has an ankle sprain in his day to day, according to Kyle Shanahan. We have D Winters, who is a younger guy who was taken out of the game last against Dallas. He has a concussion, and so he has to go through the concussion protocol. Obviously, I hope he heals up, but there's a lot of injuries that I'm hoping, if the 49ers were going to turn it around and go on a roll, that really they can use this time as like a pivotal resting, healing up. Kyle Shanahan start getting creative, leaning on these guys when we're talking about, the younger guys or rookies. Renardo Green needs to be out there. D Winters, I think, needs to be out there. Obviously, he was playing well, but then got taken out because of a concussion. Isaac Guerendo, we've had a lot of people in the chat saying that one of the reasons he's been so good in pass game is he did play wide receiver in college before transitioning to running back. So that's a guy that's perfect for Kyle Shanahan and his scheme. He loves guys that play wide receiver and can play running back, and guys who play running back that can play wide receiver. So he's a great positionless player that I'm hoping Kyle can use effectively. Jordan Mason, he re-aggravated that shoulder. So I'm hoping he can, rest and recover that after the bye. Then you have Deebo Samuel. He has the rib and oblique strain, and he's going to be evaluated after the bye week. The interesting thing with that is, so a lot of when we come for the most updated report, we had Kyle Shanahan talk yesterday, but then I don't think we'll get another full update until after Sunday, right? Is that
Yeah.
how that works?
Yeah.
That makes sense. Now, the only one, and then Chris Conley also had a hamstring, so he's week to week. So I don't know if he'll be 100% for Tampa. I'm assuming not, because hamstrings can take maybe like 3 or 4 weeks if they're not that bad. Now, Christian McCaffrey, something interesting about him is they're going to have these optional training days that some people can go to during the bye week. And McCaffrey is one of the guys who's going to try to go then, and they're going to evaluate based on how he feels going during that time. They might elevate him to practice that next coming week for Tampa. I know Ian Rappaport, you and I talked about this last week, said that potentially Christian McCaffrey would come back for November 10th.
Right.
I think that looks less and less likely. Kyle Shanahan was asked, by the way, some people in the comments also said Juwan Jennings, who has a hip injury. Kyle Shanahan pretty swiftly answered and was like, yeah, Jennings is expected to be back after the bye week.
Yeah.
He said so fast and with confidence. Right after that, he's asked about Chris McCaffrey, and I might actually have the direct quoting here.
Okay.
He said, like I said, answered with confidence regarding Juwan Jennings. Yes, we expect him back. Jennings has that hip injury. Then asked about Chris McCaffrey directly after, and goes, and this is verbatim, depends on how the week goes. There's no promises. He had no step backs, so hopefully we're on the right track. So that's
Okay.
Instead of being like, definitely we expect him back, it's like, we have pushed this
See.
guy. We promised that he was going to be back for preseason. Then we promised he was going to be back for week 1. I'm not giving you a timeline. I don't think. I think if he was going to play in Tampa, he would have already been elevated for that 3-week IR thing. So I'm not. I'm I'm going out on a limb and I'm saying I don't think that Chris McCaffrey is going to play in Tampa. I don't think they need him to win in Tampa. Um, if they want to bring him back, I think you bring him back at home on grass when you have a couple grass games coming up. I would be really careful with Christian McCaffrey. He is on a guaranteed salary. And the last time that they tried to push him a little bit too fast, it set him back all the way up until now. So they don't want to re aggravate him. That's what's most important. And if he is going to push it, you want him to be ready for the playoffs and to make a Super Bowl push, not now. Like this, I mean, you want him to be ready now, but if you're
Right.
worried that maybe he might blow out his Achilles, you want to choose your timing in a smart
Yeah.
way, in my
You
opinion.
need to be cautious. You need to
Yes.
be careful. So yeah, for McCaffrey only, most of the team, yeah, nearly all of the team is not going to be practicing this week. But McCaffrey will, and Kyle has said he will go hard to see what he's capable of and if there are any setbacks. If there are, then they hit the brakes. But I think it's unlikely that he plays against Tampa for a couple of reasons. One, that you need to be cautious. Two, that you don't want him flying back all the way to Florida and then back to San Francisco.
Yeah, so much
That can
inflammation with
that
that.
in yeah, the inflammation is bad. You don't want to do that, and there's no need to risk that. And as you point out, do they need McCaffrey to beat Tampa? No. And given that Tampa is likely not going to have Mike Evans for that game, they're not going to have the offense they normally have.
No.
So I think the Niners can win that game in Tampa because Evans isn't playing. So do you really need to push Christian? No. And you have to also realize that given the Niners' red zone woes and that McCaffrey is the solution for it, the last thing you want to do is take him out too early and then he gets hurt again, and now he's gone for the year.
Yeah.
You have to be careful. Yeah, you have to resist the urge. I'm sure that Kyle is saying, I must get McCaffrey out there. We have to win games. I get that, but the games that matter are at the end of the year, not now. You have to judge, what do I need to win this game? And when
Absolutely.
you apply that, I don't think you need McCaffrey for Tampa, and you're much better off waiting until the Seattle game at home at Easy Day. Play him then.
Coming up, this is an interesting exercise I would like to do with you. There's some games that are coming up, and I'm not sure where I feel like this 49ers team actually sits, because once again, I don't think that I learned a lot about them out of Dallas, except for that they're kind of, and you talked about this in your article, that they're kind of a 500 team. They can play really well at times. They can play poorly. I mean, in that first half, the penalties were insane. Like, obviously, they weren't stopping the run. Brock Purdy was off. Guys weren't getting open. There was a ton of problems. But aside from that, it's like leaders. Nick Bosa got his. I think he's had 3 penalties where he's been lined up to far off the line of scrimmage. He's had 3 in the last 2 games. Brendel, I think on the first offensive play of the game, got called for holding. It might have been the second one. Um, Kyle Juszczyk got penalized. Like a lot of these, that Deebo Samuel got a penalty. This is all just in the first half, and I'm sure there's a lot more that I'm not thinking about. But really, I feel like this team is playing at a mediocre level. Now, the only good thing is, and maybe I'm being maybe I'm like too optimistic here, but when I look at the NFC as a whole, I don't think there's a ton of elite teams in the NFC. So I think it's very possible for the 49ers to get into the playoffs, depending on who you're playing. I think the real issue is when you're looking at the AFC teams. I think it's a different caliber of team right now. Now there are some NFC teams, luckily they're not the division teams, that I think are going to give the 49ers a ton of trouble. And I also do think that there's some in-division teams, specifically that Rams game, that, when I'm looking at them, I don't think 49ers haven't given me confidence yet to look at a team that's playing at 500 or better and say, "Oh yeah, they're going to dominate them." Because they couldn't they if they would have beaten Dallas by 40, if they would have not let Dallas almost come back, but it's like they have not proven they can't even play a full half well. Like right now they're playing one good quarter well at a time. They need
Yeah.
to win 3 games in a row. And I think that's possible because I think the competition, when you're looking at the Buccaneers, although I do think Baker will fight till the end, he does throw like 2 interceptions a game and he's missing his 2 best offensive players in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin aren't there. Um, when I look at the Seahawks, like I said, Geno Smith and Dak should just hold hands and sit out whenever they play the 49ers. So I think it's very possible. Let me read off the rest of the schedule for you,
Okay.
and let's maybe try to give a prediction of where the 49ers are at.
All right.
They go into this bye week 4-4. You touched it on their article. They kind of are what the record says they are. And this game against Dallas was kind of a microcosm of how they've been all
Exactly.
season. Up and down, inconsistent, can play really well when they're firing on all cylinders, but they just can't keep it up for, more than 15 minutes.
If
um,
that.
so they're playing Tampa. I'm going to predict that Tampa's a win. How do you feel about that?
I think they beat Tampa because without Evans, they don't have their level of explosion.
Agree. Agree. I think, and also I have a lot of confidence in Deommodore Lenoir right now. I think he can bait Baker. I think Baker's a good quarterback, but I think he will take his chances. He has a little bit of like Matthew Stafford to him when they're down. I feel like he'll throw a ball that's dangerous. And right now, I'm going to feel confident in our defense that they could catch one of those. So I think they'll turn the ball over. So if Brock Purdy can play clean football, that gives them a good advantage in that Buccaneers game. Then they play the Seahawks, and it's at home. I'm going to predict a win because Geno, it's horrendous watching him play the 49ers. Now, something that could give me pause, I know going into the last Seahawks matchup, you talked about some of their defensive players out. Are those guys going to be back for this game? Do you think maybe they put more of a
Well,
defensive effort up than
two
they
of them
did?
will two of them will be. Now, Uchenna and Wusu is gone for the year, but Byron Murphy, their defensive tackle, possible defensive rookie of the year candidate, and Reek Woolen, their DB, they'll both be back. And they traded for the guy that I wanted the Niners to get, Ernest Jones. At linebacker, he had 15 tackles for the Seahawks in his first game. So he's replacing Nwosu. So they're going to have a way better defense than they had against the Niners. But we saw what Geno did. Geno is the eraser. Everything that Seattle does, Geno can erase. So there's no reason to pick the Seahawks, given what we've seen from Geno. So I think the Niners can win both of those games, even if they don't play 60-minute games. They've got enough that
Yeah.
they can still get the wins in those. The problem is the games after that.
Yeah. So then it's Packers, and that's at Lambeau in late November.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
Ice,
And
snow,
Jordan Love is
30
one of those.
degrees or colder.
Jordan Love is also one of those. He'll throw a couple interceptions and it doesn't matter. He's like has a little bit of maybe like Josh Allen or something in him, where some quarterbacks, when they turn the ball over, it's like this team is gonna lose. Jordan Love has had, an amazing reputation so far of being able to, have like 3 turnovers, 4 touchdown type games. They're never out of it. Now, obviously, he's a little bit younger, so I'm not going to say he instills that much confidence. You got to see it for a little longer. But I think this Packers game is tough and it's going to be cold. And I don't think this 49ers game is as tough as it's been in previous years when they've gone into Lambeau and been able to put up a fight. I don't think the 49ers are bullies in the same way that they used to be. They showed a little bit of that coming out of halftime against Dallas. But I mean, that whole first half, It was like the one of the ways that they used to install their will on Dallas was just like Dallas was this shiny, flashy team that didn't really have any grit to it. And the 49ers would play hard nosed, tough, physical football. And that's kind of not what they're doing this year. We saw a little bit of that, but we haven't seen it for a full game. I'm not, maybe we don't have to predict a win or loss, but I'm not
No,
confident about this game.
I
I
will.
think you can
I'll
lose
predict a
that game.
loss. I'll predict a
Yeah,
loss
same.
because the weather. I think that the weather will lead to
Yeah,
turnovers
also
and
Brock
Brock,
Purdy and the rain
and
and all
and,
that.
and that causes the loss.
Brock Purdy's like fumbled like every game
Yeah,
this year,
he his
except for
ball
like the Jets
control
game,
isn't
I think.
good, but he did hang on to it when he had that blitz from the DB and he hung onto the ball.
Yeah, that's true.
That was an impressive play by Brock.
That
But
was.
I look at this and just say Green Bay at the end of November, it's going to be really cold. Might be ice or snow or both or rain. And all of that adds up to bad stuff for Brock Purdy. So I think Purdy will lose the game, is the way I'm reading it. But the one thing that we can look at is say, what if Dre Greenlaw is back? And what if Love isn't playing that well? And Green Bay says we have to run. And now the Niners have Dre, they can stop the run. That can change the
People
whole
who
thing. I think that we're missing that Dre might come back and what a difference that would make. So if Dre is back for the Green Bay game, if Brock can protect the ball in the elements in the cold, the Niners can win that game. But if things are the way they are right now, I think that Brock would turn the ball over and they'd lose in Green
yeah. Mustapha has been like a little mini Dre Greenlaw, obviously not at the same standard that Dre is at, but he definitely does hit hard, and he's been a
Bay. Yeah,
great pickup. This draft class has actually been one of the 49ers' most impressive of recent years. I don't know if I anticipate Dre Greenlaw will be back. For people who didn't see my injury update, Kyle Shanahan said that Dre Greenlaw's a couple weeks behind wherever Christian McCaffrey is, and we don't have a set timeline for Christian McCaffrey, so it's hard to
yeah,
use that as a set timeline for Dre Greenlaw. But all it tells me is while they're rehabbing, Christian McCaffrey looks more like he's going to be able to at least start practicing, and Dre
right.
Greenlaw looks behind that. So,
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying that on the if then scenario, if Greenlaw is playing, that changes their chances against both Green Bay and Buffalo. So his return will be really key. And I think people are paying so much attention to Christian that they're ignoring Dre. And that Dre can have a lot of impact. And we'll see. Yeah. And Coach Chipto points out, Brock's used to Minnesota weather. He is. And it is the rain that he isn't used to. Yeah, I understand all that, but we have the history of Brock just not playing well when it's cold and when it's raining or there's some form of precipitation.
yeah.
So I just look at it and say, I've seen forecasts for that day in Green Bay that have changed. Most of them have been really cold, 30 or under. Most of them have said rain and or ice, in some cases snow. Some of them have said dry. So we'll just have to see what happens when we finally come up on that date. But if there's rain, I don't see how the Niners win that game.
Well, then moving on from that, not great news because then they're playing at Buffalo or in Buffalo for the Bills Stadium. Uh, I predicted that would be a loss even
Sure.
preseason. I just feel like Josh Allen is going to give this defense a run for their money. Um, Obviously, when it comes to the Bills offense, it's very Josh Allen centric. So potentially the 49ers could do something with that. But I mean, Allen can utilize his legs. He can run down the field, even if he's not targeting. Um, I think that that's a loss,
Yeah.
even without the weather. And then you add in the fact
Yeah.
that it's
Yeah.
going to be a cold, wet,
Buff.
snowy potentially game. That makes it even worse. I'm like, put it on a neutral field. I think that Buffalo wins that game. Then you
Right.
add in the fact that Brock Purdy struggles in cold weather games, rainy, wet, environments. Then that
Yeah.
makes it
Well,
even worse to me.
Buffalo in the first week in December, not what you would want. So
No.
that's the start of it. But then beyond that, it's Josh Allen is the kind of quarterback they have a lot of trouble with.
And
Somebody
so that would make
that's a
them six
big,
and six
aggressive
at that
runner.
point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But all of that is planned. That they win the next 3 games, and then they lose, and they lose in Green Bay, lose in Buffalo by my account, and then it's okay. You can only lose one more game, and you still got Detroit on the schedule. After that, then it becomes risky if they lose another.
Do you think for do you think for the NFC that they could get in with 9 or 10 wins, or how many wins do you think that they need to have?
I think their only path to the playoffs is winning the division because they've lost so many NFC games already, and the games that they could lose in the rest of the schedule are all NFC.
Well,
Green
that scares
Bay,
me because
yeah. Oh well, one of them is AFC, one of them is Buffalo. So Green Bay, Buffalo, Detroit. It's just the problem is you get to the NFC tiebreakers for the wild card games, and the Niners will lose some of the head-to-heads, or they won't have a tiebreaker advantage just because they've lost so many NFC games. That's going to be a problem.
the thing that scares me about that is they definitely have some games after the Packers and Bills. They come back, face the Bears, but then they have the Rams, they have the Lions. They have some games that are not automatic wins. Even now that Dolphins game with Tua back, I think that they'll win that game, but it's not like it's Skylar Thompson at quarterback. I think that we saw at least the offense was able to have some production for Miami this last
Yeah.
Sunday, way more so than when Tua was
Oh
sitting.
yeah, yeah. Clearly a better team on offense with Tua.
Yeah.
But
Like I said, I'm not
The Niners
predicting.
beat them recently with Tua, so I'm not that
I
worried
think
about
that
the
they'll
Miami
beat
game.
them, but I don't think they're beating the Lions right now. I mean, we
No,
we
no,
haven't seen a team.
no
Maybe
chance.
by the time that Lions game comes up, we've seen them play multiple quarters of football well. Like you said, though, even if they beat Tampa um and the Seahawks, I think that they can beat those teams without playing well all 4 quarters. Because I just think
Right.
those two teams right now are struggling.
But
I need to see
Green Bay
them
and
play
Buffalo
all
though.
4 quarters of a game if I think that they're going to beat the Lions. Because I don't
Yeah.
think that
Oh well,
they
they're
can
not.
play a good half and beat the Lions. I don't think they can play a good quarter and beat the Lions. They need to play hard every game. And then also the Lions, I know 49ers fans are familiar with this because the same stat used to apply to them. But right now there's a stat that every team that's played the Lions has gone on to lose the next week because they're all beat up. Well, the game after the Lions game is going to be really important for the 49ers because they need to win all their division games.
Yeah.
Um, so it's no easy feat. That was the down part of losing these games to start the season. They were kind of the easier gimme games. Is the rest of the season is going to be very challenging.
Yeah.
For people who don't have it
There's
in
no
front of
margin
them,
for error. They don't have the easy games left. I mean, it's the easiest games left on the schedule are what Seattle and maybe Miami or Arizona.
Bears.
It's not going to be easy. And you look at what Detroit's doing now. I mean, 99 points in 2 games. They're
Yeah,
like the 84 Niners. They're just putting up points like it's a
that's what I'm
video
saying. Though,
game.
like not they need to win that Lions game, which right now feels impossible. They don't feel like a team that can do that now. And
No,
then even if they didn't win that or did, if that stat continues to be true where every team after the Lions loses, they have to win 18 because that's against the Cardinals. That's an in division game. That's going to
right.
be so important to them, especially right now. I think are they tied up with the Cardinals or Cardinals in front of them because they have the
Yeah,
tiebreaker?
right. Well, Arizona won head to head, so they're ahead of the
Yeah.
Niners, even though they got the
So that week
same record.
18 game is going to be critical. It's not going to be like last year where the 49ers are floating and they have to. I mean, last year their problem going into week 18 was do we rest guys because we also have another week and we don't want to be
Yeah.
too rusty, but also we want to rehab. Like they're going to be going into week 18 trying to play their best football game.
Yep, and they'll be coming off the Detroit game, but we'll see. It's just I don't give them any shot against the Lions. I think the Lions are on another level now. But one thing that'll be interesting to watch for at the trade deadline is to see what Detroit does at edge. They've got to replace Hutchinson. They need to make a
Yeah,
move.
you were saying that
If they do, they're the Super Bowl favorite in my book over Kansas City. If they don't, I take Kansas City.
Okay. I see that. I see that. That AFC is crazy. I mean, the Ravens just got better. I think Kansas City looks really good, but
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know. That I feel like they're a AFC is a different class right now.
it
They are
is,
strong,
but
physical.
but they also have to face each other, so
They
they're going
take
to
each
have to
other out,
play
which is
some tough competition that could rough them up at least a little bit. But with Kansas City, I look at it like the Niners when they were up for their three-peat chance. They had won. They killed Denver 55-10. They beat Cincinnati on the last minute 2 minute drive with the touchdown pass to John Taylor. 1990, they were 14-2. They were the best team in the league. They were on their way to the winning score to go to the Super Bowl. Roger Craig fumbles, whole thing falls apart. The story for Kansas City is the biggest threat to your team is yourself. It's imploding. It's making a mistake at the worst moment. And the teams that are close enough to them in the AFC, if Kansas City makes a turnover like that in the AFC Championship game, it's all over. And that's what history has shown is that the three-peat teams have always imploded. Kansas City seems to be focused on, well, we can beat everybody we play. That's not the issue. The issue is staring you in the mirror. And that's what I think Kansas City fans need to come to grips with. History
agree.
shows implosion. That's what you have to fear, not the opponent, you.
Now, I think that this is a good comment or like maybe way that the 49ers could get around the Lions is if the 49 or if the Lions end up pulling a 49ers and running their players in the ground. They brought up
Mhm.
that the reason that they lost Hutch is they were going 100% all in games
That's
where they were
valid.
already dominating. And
Yeah.
there is
Hutchinson didn't need to
something
be on the field then. That's a great point.
agree.
Coach Hipto agreed.
And there is something to
Offensively,
like
though, they need to do that.
getting hot at the right time. We've seen that with like, I mean, Kansas City is the prime example of that, right? Like they've gone in the last couple of years that they've won the Super Bowl. You've looked at their regular season and you're not very confident about them, and then they start steamrolling in the playoffs. So
Right.
really, what I'm saying with the 49ers is kind of the opposite. They've gone on these winning streaks, 9 games in a row, winning streaks in the regular season. You go in the playoffs, you're killing people, and then you kind of burn out or get injured before the final game. So that's a one thing if you are a 49ers hope that or a 49ers fan that can give you hope is although the games that they've lost so far are very disappointing and it's hard to exactly see where this team is, if they can use this bye week to get the players healthy that need to be healthy to start creatively scheming up on offense and defense utilizing these younger guys and the rookies, and maybe even November 5th is the trade deadline, adding in a piece. I think the 49ers are going to be buyers now. I think that
Yeah.
the win against Dallas, they feel like they can go on a run. Might as well. You're paying these guys for one last go around. You might as well give it your best shot.
Sure.
Um I I still see an avenue where the 49ers best football is ahead of them, and
No doubt.
this isn't based on the hard thing is like evaluating what you've seen on the field this year and then also taking into consideration the reputation that the 49ers have and their ability that they have gone on runs when it seemed like they're at their lowest depths. So I don't think we can count out the 49ers now. And I do see, like you said, later on in the season, I'm not even saying Tampa game, but if it's Seahawks, if it's Bears game, Chris McCaffrey coming back, Dre Greenlaw starting to come back, those are two games that I'm eyeing that I think would be good times for those players to start looking to come back. Finding the diamond in the rough in Isaac Guerendo, Jennings coming back, he's going to be a helper on offense. I think they found something in George Kittle. I don't know how they ever lost it because he's been on the field, but if Kyle can kind of watch the tape and go, okay, instead of trying to target Debo Samuel 14 times a game and start trying to use him as a running back, which hasn't worked in 2 years. We can scheme open crossing routes for him, get him, 6 to 8 targets, and let's give those extra targets to George Kittle in the red zone when we're, getting stopped, they've walked down the field fairly well. It's
Yeah,
where they've really struggled is in that red zone area. Um, I think Jordan Mason being healthy, because even when Christian McCaffrey comes back, it's not like they can use him in the way that they used him last year and start giving him, 25 carries a game. He'd immediately get injured again. So I think it
yeah,
is promising that they not only have Jordan Mason, who can be a downhill physical runner, but then they have Isaac Guerendo, who shows speed. Like you were saying earlier, if there's a couple plays, it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a starter, but a couple plays a game where Cowling can, spook the defense into not, how hunching down towards the line of scrimmage, make sure to open up that field by calling some deep routes. Either A, you're going to get points or get in a field goal range with that, or B, at least defense will start playing you differently. And then Brock Purdy continuing to utilize his legs. I see ways where the 49ers can start to get hot
yeah. They've got
coming off
things
of
they
that.
can build on, and this bye will help them in getting healthy and getting more consistency. Part of the problem for this team is there was a lot of guys that came in late because of the contract stuff. Now you've played enough games, but with the bye week, you get a chance to heal up and focus in and say, okay, this is when we always make our push. And I
Yeah.
think history will help them in giving them confidence for, okay, now we're ready, now we go. And if McCaffrey comes back and he can play and approaching the 23 level, then they've got something they can ride. That's something that they can get better on. But I think the overall goal going into the second half of the year, consistency. They are a team of moments. They are not a team of 60 minutes. They need to become a 60-minute team by the time they go to Green Bay, because otherwise they'll lose their next two. So they have to get to that point. And it's a question of what Kyle can do in coaching them up and the assistant coaches and get them to a point where they're actually ready. What concerned me with the Dallas game was the defense let up a little bit, let them back in.
Yeah.
They took their foot off the gas too early, and they didn't read the total game right, and
Yeah.
that screwed everything up. So they're going to have to correct mistakes like that, where it's not just the execution, but how you see the game and how you deploy that strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah. The defense letting their foot off the gas that early was a coaching mistake, kind of thing you
They
can
did let
correct.
CD Lamb wide
And
open.
that right,
You can't do
and
that.
no,
There should be
and
basic rules going into a game.
yeah, you would
You're
think
going to do it.
cover
Never let.
CD
Yeah,
with
yeah,
at least
yeah.
two guys. Yeah, that should be a basic. But the point being, everyone needs to evolve, and if they can, then they can get to a point of consistency that can then carry them. But they need to get to that point by Green Bay. If they do, I think they've got a decent chance to do well in the postseason. I don't think they get past Detroit whenever they play them, but I think that they can do a lot of damage in the NFC up to that point. And then it's a question of what do you get from CMC? What do you get from Greenlaw? How does the team evolve? Do the rookies hit a wall or do the rookies keep going? What's going to happen with them?
Be
There's a
interesting
lot
too,
of
because they
stuff
have a lot
that's
of.
going to factor in. They're leaning on a lot of people. But if they can clean up the penalties and stop shooting themselves in the foot, then they can have more consistent drives. Then the defense gets more rest, and then they can play at their best. They can do that. They can accomplish that. It's within the realm of possibility. But a lot of things need to line up. They're going to need McCaffrey and Greenlaw to contribute. They don't need them to carry the team, but they need them to be guys that they can count on. If they get that, and the rest of the team takes their game up a level, and the coaches clean stuff up, Niners will be a good team closing the year.
I completely agree. Mitchell and Ness says they need to clean up the penalties 100%. And that's on Kyle. I mean, a lot of this we can give certain players, maybe they're making execution errors, but a lot of when it comes to the leaders and what they've been allowed to do and how they've been allowed to conduct themselves, that really comes into leadership and Kyle, but that's kind of a more overarching problem that I don't think will get cleaned up mid-season. I think that will be a after the season type of decision.
Probably, but hopefully at least there's some progress that can be made.
Yeah, some internal scouting. Let's not rule it off. Maybe that happens. And then I just thought this was funny. Every time Ronnie Bell comes to the game, comes in the game, something stupid happens surrounding him. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Like people earlier were saying Jacob Cowing maybe doesn't know enough. Like I'm not saying for him to be in the game all the time, but if there's ever an opportunity where it's Jacob Cowing or Ronnie Bell, get Jacob Cowing in the game, please. Ronnie Bell does not need to be that guy. But
I'm hoping to see a lot of inactives for Ronnie Bell in the second half of the year.
yeah. I think we have, we'll have a lot more to talk about next week. I know that there's the four-man front coming up in like 5 minutes, so I think we'll shut this one down. But I wanted to say thank you for everyone contributing in the comments. I don't know if we interacted as much as we normally did, but want to shout out to all the regulars. I saw Papa J in the chat. I saw Mr. Corey. My dad, Ricky Diaz, said he was worried about us not being out of the woods because of the defense kind of crumbling at the end there, which I think is a fair concern. Um, don't know exactly how they address that, but I'm hoping that they're gonna watch film and figure it out. Do you have a solution for them not crumbling on defense at the end before we go, Tom?
No, it's more about being clean, but getting Greenlaw back would be key. It gives them a lot more confidence to work around him. And I think that if they have Greenlaw, then there's more things that they can do strategically and tactically that'll help them. And hopefully, as the rookies get more time and reps, that they'll get better as the season goes on. We've seen improvement now from Malik Mustapha from last game to this one. Same thing with Jair. Jair's been playing badly. This was his best game in a
He
while.
played a little better, right?
He played much
Okay.
better than he has been. Hopefully that continues. And if you see that level of improvement, young guys can improve quickly. And if they take their game up to another level and they get Greenlaw back, then it becomes a much more reliable defense than it has been, where you're a 500 team in part because your defense, you don't know what you're going to get. So hopefully, with reps, with time, they can get to a balance that they need.
I agree. Let me read some last comments regarding the defensive woes. I think Mr. Corey's upset that Robert Sala won't be coming back. Maybe they'll call him up, and just have some discussions with him. Not bring him back, but maybe ask for his opinion. I know he was over at the Lambeau Field working with the Packers for a little bit, so maybe he'll lend an ear and some helpful advice to his buddies in Santa Clara. And then to end it off, real positivity going on here. The Niners are going to the Super Bowl, period. It will be KFC. They're going to get mashed potatoes and fried chicken. It'll be KC, and the NFL will make sure KC wins, make Mahomes the new glory guy, undefeated. Three-peat. I understand.
We'll see.
Not as positive as.
No, I think your dad's right, though. Prior to the season, that was what I had in my Super Bowl was Kansas City, Detroit. But I had Detroit winning, and here's why. Penei Sewell versus Chris Jones. Part of what Kansas City has relied upon to win the Super Bowls against the Niners, Jones winning his matchup, dominating it. He goes up against Penei Sewell. That ain't going to happen. I think the Detroit offense is on another level now, and on a level that can beat even the Kansas City defense. So if Kansas City rolls through, I think that they have to be very worried about Detroit, provided that the Lions get a replacement for Hutchinson at the deadline.
I agree with that. If I was that, I mean, they should go all in because this is the last year with Ben Johnson. I'd look if I was the Lions into getting Max Crosby, but I'm hopeful. I mean, I don't know how, but I really feel like this show that we did together made me kind of I turned back my optimistic side. I feel like the 49ers can pull it around.
Yeah,
There's going to be some guys that are getting healthy. Which I think is a little bit different than others. I'm not anticipating it'll be right coming out of the bye week, but I think slowly for the second half of the season, we'll be getting guys back healthy. I think they could make a move that could be helpful potentially on that defensive line. Where do you think if they're going to make a trade, if they're going to be buyers, who do you think they'll target before the trade deadline?
I think they'll look at the defensive line and wide receiver, possibly running back. It depends on what they see from Christian in practice this week. That if they think McCaffrey is good to go and coming back soon, then they won't make a move for a running back. But if they see that he's still going to need some time, that he does have a setback, then I could see them making a move for somebody like Breida or Jerick McKinnon or Jermichael Hasty, somebody like that. But regardless, I don't think they're going to make a splashy move. They're not going to get a big name. They're going to get guys that help their depth.
I did see while we were streaming the Vikings. Kind of interesting. They're a team that I shouldn't do this, but I feel like I've overlooked them when it comes to actually winning the Super Bowl because Sam Darnold is their quarterback. But that's not totally fair for me to say. I mean, they totally beat up on the 49ers, and if the 49ers have to face them in the playoffs, it's not going to be an easy victory, let alone, maybe it wouldn't be. Mitchell and I said Darnold turning into pumpkin. Anyways, they made a big trade. They got left tackle from the Jaguars, Cam Robinson, in exchange for some draft competition.
Well,
it's
that's a
very
good move for
rare.
them.
Isn't it really rare to get offensive linemen in the middle of the season?
Very,
I know
but
last stream we kind of talked about that.
yeah, though I think that Jacksonville is in a different place just because they're so poor now in terms of their
they're
record.
really
They've got
fire selling
no
it.
shot. So Balky's having a fire sale, and it makes sense for Minnesota because they lost Darisaw for the year, so they needed a new left tackle. And Cam Robinson is the one left tackle available. They went and got him. I think that's a good move.
Well, that's awesome for them. I don't know that. Does that change how you feel if the 49ers face the Vikings again?
Yeah, it's possible.
Already had, I feel like a good when the 49ers faced them. I know you said there was injuries, but I felt like their offensive line was very good, very strong for Sam Darnold.
It is. But losing Darisaw was a huge blow because he's one of the best left tackles in the league. So to get Cam Robinson, a talented tackle, guy that can play the position well, that's a good move for them. Can the Niners beat Minnesota? That might be who they face. Now, if the Niners are the 4 seed, win the NFC West, they could see Minnesota as the top wild card. But it's going to depend between Minnesota, Washington, Green Bay. All of them are going to be fighting to win division, and then whoever doesn't plays the Niners. Yeah, so they could be facing Minnesota again, and that would be in Santa Clara. So that would help them. I think it'd be a tough game because Kyle hasn't proven that he can beat Brian Flores yet.
Yeah,
but
Brock Purdy too.
And Purdy, but having the experience of having played them, I think would help the Niners in figuring out how do we beat this team now. Yeah. I think that they can go to school on that game to give them a better chance in playoff setting.
Especially in the same season, like a lot of the defensives that you saw Brock struggle with and then face again, it was like the next season with different players. So I see what you're saying, that at least they'd have a game with similar players, the same play callers that they could actually work around, and maybe some of the stuff that stumped them the first time wouldn't be surprises to them anymore. It's going to be an interesting playoffs for sure. I think the 49ers get in, and I'm hopeful that injuries will start healing up and the rookies with even more playing experience. That'll be something to watch. Like a lot of times rookies kind of fall off because they get tired. They're not used to the longevity of the season. That's why this bye week is really important. I hope that the right guys that rest, the guys that need to start rehabbing and training do that. But when it comes to a lot of these key rookie talented guys, you really want to just tell them to kind of lay off because they're not used to the longevity of the NFL season.
Yeah, they're used to a college season. Right.
So
yeah, hopefully they'll be fine. I think the bye week will definitely help the rookies. And we're overlooking that because otherwise there's a danger that they can hit a wall. And if the rookies hit a wall, the Niners are in trouble because the rookies are playing critical roles right now.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think we're going to end it there. Someone said, do we have plans for the bye week? Please make sure to like and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be going live with Marco, I think on my channel and his channel. So I'm very excited about doing that. And if you guys know Sourdough Sam, we're going to have a show. He's in New York now. So if was originally supposed to be this week, but I think it might be pushed back till next one. But that will be exciting. A lot of what we talked about, especially early on in the show, talking about what's to come and the assessments, came from parts of Tom's articles. So make sure to follow Tom on Twitter, NinerCast. Is there going to be more going up this bye week?
Yeah, I'll have some stuff. I'll have an NFC preview of, and also take a look at the Niners the halfway point. Just assess what's going on.
Okay, so make sure to like and subscribe to me if you can. Also, if you can leave me a comment, tell me where you feel like the 49ers stand up to other NFC teams. Do you think that how many wins do you think they're going to get in the rest of the season? Because that's a big aspect that Tom and I talked about. Leave that in the comments. That really helps me out. And like I said, like and subscribe because we'll be going after more. And then next week we'll have more injury reports and stuff like that going out. But lots of content coming out for you. Always enjoy streaming with you, Tom. It's everyone's favorite.
Absolutely, Ashley.
Every week I get comments. I'm like, Tom's the best.
Oh, well, that's very sweet. I appreciate that. But it's a great time to talk with you, Ashley. Appreciate it.
For sure. And everyone have a safe and happy Halloween. I know Halloween's coming. If you're passing out candy, if you're dressing up, going out, make sure you're staying hydrated and having fun. I'll do something like that too, probably. I can't wait to like live in a place where there's lots of trick-or-treaters. I feel like it's not so much in like apartments and stuff like that, but I'm excited to do that. So yeah. Anyways, have a good one. Happy Halloween. And don't forget to vote. That's coming up too, but I'll probably talk to everyone before that happens. So anyways, bye guys. Boop, boop. Kyle loves dressing up as a head coach. Mr. Corey coming out swinging.